The history of popular music categories is long and complicated. The desire to categorize seems to originate with the technological transformations of sound recordings and music distribution. But organizing music in categories is also associated with migration and demographic divisions. In popular music, the categorizers and the things categorized, songs or tracks, and their artists are in constant flux. Music is a community-based activity, and categories of music often relate to types of people, although these associations can change over time. Musical genres bind together industry performers, critics, and fans in making what they identify as a distinctive sort of music. But when did music start to get categorized, and what was the purpose? One of the first things we do when listening to a new piece of music is to classify it. Music genres can arise out of previous styles, just like Brahms' 1854 First Symphony echoed Beethoven's Ninth Symphony 30 years later. Likewise, Iggy Pop's 1977 hit Last for Life reflects two songs from 1966 in the first few seconds. I'm Ready for Love by Martha and the Vandellas, and You Can't Hurry Love by the Supremes. Genres with short, simple names tend to be the core divisions that cluster other secondary categories. Rock, jazz, or country are core genres, whereas country rock, fusion jazz, or alternative rock would be considered subgenres. Age, gender, race, class, and other factors played a role in mapping social categories onto musical ones. For a young person today, a genre name like rhythm and blues may represent merely a music style. Yet, that genre name was initially describing African American music produced outside the mainstream of the American music industry. The music industry often attempts to guide, set trends, and control music genre names. For example, Billboard magazine created a chart called Country and Western to encompass hillbilly, honky-tonk, western swing, cowboy music, folk, and country jive. Billboard similarly introduced the rhythm and blues chart to represent the best-selling records in the field of popular black music. The invented term R&B replaced an earlier term, race records, invented by the OK Record Company to refer to music created by and for African Americans. Race records included sounds now associated with diverse styles, including gospel, blues, black vaudeville, and jazz. Historians of sound recording often describe the period between 1890 to 1930 as the pre-recording era. Before sound recordings, commercial music was performed in professional venues or distributed as printed music. The world of sheet music required face-to-face contact, the means to buy a piano or an organ, and the time and resources to learn how to read music. Musically literate buyers looked for sheet music of their favorite songs, and many amateurs pursued lessons to entertain family and guests at home on their parlor pianos. A brand new type of vocal music known as parlor was created and combined traditional folk songs with fresh lyrics. When Thomas Edison discovered that sound could be reproduced using a tinfoil strip wrapped around a rotating metal cylinder, recorded music became available with an instrumental device called the phonograph. The phonograph became the inspiration for Emil Berliner's gramophone. The Berliner Gramophone Company manufactured cheaper and easier to use flat discs to record sound. Suddenly, the music industry would be disrupted by the working class who could afford to purchase the new technology. In the late 19th century, stricter copyright laws were imposed in the United States, regulating intellectual property, reproduction, and use. Numerous publishers, singers, and composers emerged in a New York area known as Tin Pan Alley and profit by producing producing commercially successful songs. Music categories expanded from opera and included vaudeville and ragtime. New genres developed to fit into the flood of contemporary musical expressions that burst onto the scene and adapt to a rapidly changing awareness of who was making and listening to these kinds of music. The Tin Pan Alley blues compositions initially spread through live performances and eventually became commercialized and published. The loosening of patent restrictions on what material formed records increased the range of music that could circulate and the number of people who had access to recorded music. With guaranteed access to a larger public, these companies began to search for audiences to exploit. The recording industry primarily recognized white immigrants as fertile turf for marketing. However, the new immigrants, both black and white workers that arrived from the rural south to the urban north, used sound recordings to spread and blend their communities and decrease homesickness feelings. In short, from the early years of the 20th century until the early 1920s, the most overarching category of difference in the US music industry was that of foreign records. Foreign records and other broad categories such as dance, race, and vocal music got further divided into what could be called genres and referred to as songs or dance types. The listings for upcoming record releases and advertisements in music industry publications and catalogs such as Talking Machine World and The Phonograph got organized by record company and category with entries detailing the song title, performer, and genre. On an illustrated ad for OK Records from April 7, 1920, one song has the title Blues, referring to the blues craze that has been ongoing since W.C. Handy's Memphis Blues and other blues titles published back in 1912. Mamie Smith's second recording, Crazy Blues, becomes a year's success song for the US recording industry. Crazy Blues inaugurates the start of the blues genre. To briefly conclude the discussion of categories and genres around 1920, two terms associated with African Americans: blues and jazz. Jazz history has become more standardized than the history of the blues. The early recordings of Louis Armstrong and Jelly Roll Morton, perhaps exposed to the 1917 recordings of the original Dixieland Jazz Band, create the founding narratives that placed jazz birth in New Orleans. But that's a whole different story to tell on another time.